Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm excited today to have a fan favorite back in the studio, Erika Bayh. Welcome, Erika.
Oh, hello, Christine.
So good to see you. So, Erika, we've been doing a series that we started on looking at the different types of personality assessments or work style assessments that we do so many of, that so many people do in the workplace, and then kind of do a deep dive into each one so that people can get more ideas of how to work with these styles a little bit better, how to sell to them a little bit more effectively, how to have less conflict and more interpersonal effectiveness at work. Okay. So I invited you because Erika is not only a great manager. And if you listen to some of our podcasts, she has great ideas. She's a great leader, has great tips for everybody, but also she is a very particular style. And one of those, if you're talking about DISC, if you're talking about the DISC assessment, she falls in. Well, why don't you tell them where you fall there pretty strongly?
Yes, for DISC, I am a capital S, lowercase I, which means I'm strongest in steadiness and then secondary influence. So SI is my style in DISC.
Great. And if we're talking about social styles and versatility, which some people have been doing a lot of that work with us lately, she falls very strongly in what we call the amiable category in that quadrant. And then if we're talking about working genius, that she falls strong in enablement and then in galvanizing. So you can kind of see the person that we're talking about with Erika. And while she's a real person and she can do all sorts of things, there are certain work style preferences like everybody has. She has some too. And so we're going to be talking about when you're working with someone that falls into those general categories. And so I'm going to interview Erika a little bit. So just so you guys know, kind of in the back of your minds where she falls and how to work with some of the folks that you have like this. A lot of people that have these types, these are generalizations, but I do see them in certain businesses. You see more of these types. Erika, where do you see more of these types? And I'll see if they align with the ones that I see so often.
Well, certainly any sort of social serving organization, so educational organizations, social services, any sort of caretaker, anyone that is doing nonprofit work, working with people. So a lot of people-oriented or youth-oriented professions tend to be filled with this type.
Packed. Teachers.
So
with a lot of teachers, nurses, a lot of social workers, certainly like Erika said, we work with a lot of HR directors, a lot of HR managers, HR leaders, huge in this area. I just did one with them and so many people. I mean, it was, you know, it also can be within so many people in HR have this, as well as almost in any company, it's going to be your HR teams are going to be stacked with this, as well as any kind of part of your organization that is serving others, even if it's internal. You'll see a lot of this. Not as much in IT though, not that kind of serving. We'll come to those in another. Those are clearly in another category most of the time.
Well, please, in IT, you're in service to the technology first. And the people behind the technology second,
and they're
usually.
Very annoying to them. Us people are very annoying to them. All right, these are very generalizations, but that's what we're talking about. We're literally talking about putting people in a box. And the reason that we're doing it is not to shut down people, but to help you get some insights into how to work better with folks. Sometimes it gets so complicated, or some people just aren't naturally good at it, that these kinds of things can help you maybe open up something. Or if you're having trouble with a certain relationship, maybe you can shift things a little bit to work with them in a style that maybe would be more effective to them. So Erika, in your kind of style of working or your behavioral style of working, what do you think are the things that your biggest pet peeves in how someone maybe works with you, like a colleague or a boss or somebody who reports to you? What are some of those biggest pet peeves you would have?
Yeah, that's such a fun question, isn't it? The pet peeve question. And before I answer, it's so interesting to say all of my sort of types in one place from the different assessments, because it is such a reminder that there's going to be no assessment that we do that's going to suddenly reveal you're a stunningly different person. The wording is different. The descriptions are different. The tips might be slightly different. But if you do multiple assessments, it's going to continuously remind yourself and others that you are who you are. So no matter what word you use with me, what it reveals is that I am very people and feeling oriented. And so my biggest pet peeves always come down to this sort of lack of care or caring. And my perception of that. So to be real clear, it's my perception that there is a lack of care or a lack of caring. So whether that's an abruptness in the way someone's talking to me, a seeming lack of respect for my time or what I might be going through, that sort of lack of care is where all the pet peeves live, I think, if I were to really be honest about that.
Yeah, I love that you started with that because that's a really good framing. You know, one of the things that we always say is that self-awareness plus self-regulation equals a rise in emotional intelligence. And that is perfect. When we talk about all of these assessments, they're really measuring a couple of big things. And it's how much are you task oriented or goal focused, and how much are you people or relationship focused. And I think you just hit the nail on the head is if you have somebody, you'll be able to pick them out because of this very people relationship oriented focus. It doesn't mean they're not task focused as well, or they're not focused on goals, but almost always if one is going to outweigh the other, it's going to be people and relationships. And if you'll notice, their goals and their tasks often have to do with that being first and foremost, strengthening those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think, just to say again what you just said, because it's a common misperception that somebody that might be in this category of people or feeling focused is somehow less productive than a task focused person. And that, as you just mentioned, is not true at all. It's simply the motivating force behind our ultra productivity is that we're working in a state where we feel heard and valued and respected, and that fuels our output, which can be and often is exceptional. Because we feel like we're in a cared for, caring environment, we will surpass expectations often when we're in that setting. So it is an interesting, if we talk about not just pet peeves, but misperceptions. We all have misperceptions about people in sort of different placements in different types. And a common misperception of someone in my area of sort of that amiable, supportive, helping, steady, empathetic, all these words that fall into my categories is that all we're just doing is gabbing by the coffee pot or the water cooler. And that's not it. It's that we just care first and then let's get down to work.
Yeah. And oftentimes they'll get through something quicker because they have so much trust built up with people.
Yes.
So people are willing to go out on a limb for you. They're willing to, as we say, walk through walls for you. So a lot of times you can skip a lot of the red tape that other folks are stuck in because you have such a relationship with people. And so that's also key to seeing it. It's sometimes just a different route, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So with that all in mind, how dare I ask somebody who's amiable to go right into pet peeves without saying something that builds upon our relationship first. So anyway, why don't you share with us some of the things that do upset you? Because sometimes people don't realize that how we can upset somebody with this style without realizing it, right? Because we're not aware of some stuff.
And because it's small things, and so other types that are more of the driving type where it's really just, what is the task at hand? What is on the next thing on my list? Let's achieve that goal, that aren't necessarily thinking in any way about the human part of the interaction. They're genuinely just like, this is what's next. It's the small things that actually drive people like me crazy. And I over and over have joked, but it's so true that it's something simple as calling me without warning. I always talk about this one because what happens is it jars me, throws me off my task, and it scares me. And I'm like, what's happened? Why are we talking? I don't know why we're talking. What do we need to talk for? It's the same as walking up to a person's desk, like kind of that interruption. We talk a lot in other conversations about the sort of being more mindful about interruptions. So somebody that is in this sort of amiable steadiness, more person oriented, that sort of unmindful interruption throws us way off. Some of them are unavoidable. You know, of course, sometimes we just need to walk up to someone's desk or pick up the phone. But where possible, a way to care for a person in my type is to give that sort of quick heads up. Do you have a minute to talk? Can I borrow 5 minutes? And then approach and then make the phone call. So something that's so small, which to a driver type is going to drive them crazy. Why do we have to do this? Let's just get the job done. That small thing can actually throw someone like me off course more than you might imagine. So that's one example of something that drives me and others in my little corner of the world crazy.
And it's surprising because I'm guilty of doing this to Erica, in the past. I try to be aware of it, but only because she's helped me to see it. But the thing is that sometimes we think, why would she need a heads up? She's a people person, she's a relationship person, and calling you is more people oriented than sending you a note, but apparently it's not. And the way you described it is really good to see, because someone like me who is very, what's it called, an expressive or a galvanizer, like very high on the assessments in those categories, while I'm still people focused, I just immediately kind of just spontaneously will communicate or reach out or whatever. And Erica has taught me that can be jarring, like she said. And so I love that cautious when approaching, as you would, at the zoo. You don't want to like run up to the animals and like bang on their cages.
Don't scare the animals.
Cautiously. Put your little hand out there.
Because to your point, so you and another one of your favorite guests on here, Greg, are very expressive, and that sort of outward display of communication that is in the more spontaneous arena, that says we are fueled by those spontaneous conversations, we're fueled by the people around us, is actually different for me. So even though I really enjoy people and have that sort of care quality, I also really treasure my internal ecosystem. And so it's not that I don't want the conversation, it's the care around just, is now the right time for me? Because if I'm in the flow of something creative, or if I'm actually struggling with a problem and really in my own mind about it, now might not be the best time to turn my attention away from it. And so it's the care around the approach that I think that comes up for me a lot when I think about this. It's handle with care, which is different than handle with kid gloves,
Right.
but it is that idea of handle with a caring approach is really, I know for me, when I think about it, a common theme.
Yeah, I love that. And you could be starting off a conversation with this person that you're like, why are they so prickly with me? When in fact, it might be that just the way you started got you off on the wrong foot, but they're not necessarily, and nor is it their job necessarily to tell you that. And so, if you have that feeling with someone, then try a different approach and you might get a different way of working within, even in that conversation. All right. So that's a good pet peeve. I love it. What's another one? It might be in the same kind of category or another one, but like something that also that people do that may not realize it.
Well, it is in the same category, but it's slightly different, that I think a lot of us are guilty of when we're driving towards a goal, is in the way we're communicating in our emails, or in the way we're starting our meetings, is that we start straight away with did you get this report turned in? Do you have those numbers for me? Have you finished that task? That is the beginning and end of it, forgetting the bookend of, we don't have to spend an hour in conversation about how our weekends were. But we can certainly start with a good morning. I hope everyone is well today. Here's what we're going to talk about. We have this big project. We have this big fundraiser. We have this grant that's due. We have this client we're trying to land, whatever it is, to sort of give breath first into the conversation with a hello, how are you? And here's what we're going to talk about, and then dive in. Because again, you use words like jarring and off-putting before. It's the same impact when it's in communication, whether it's at a staff meeting or in an email communication. If it's just, this is what's not done yet, or this is what has to do, and there's no air around it, for the humanity, that can be a pet peeve.
Love it. And any other ones that you can think of?
I'm sure there'll be others that might crop into my head, but those are the big ones, because it it is all that, like, just let's start with care and then proceed from there.
Okay. So what do you love about when people work with you, right? So that you like, I love working with this person. Can you identify some of the behavioral things or the choices that happen that people do?
Yeah. I love a yes mindset. So when we talk about positive psychology, this sort of creative, brainstorming, hopeful, yes approach to problem solving, I thrive on that kind of energy. So what that looks like is when I'm working with a coworker on a project, or even when communicating, we are fueling possibilities while also addressing realistic concerns or actual problems that we might be facing. What it looks like is we're not stuck in the problem or the no around the solution. We are actually ignited by the challenge that's presented to us by the problem, if that makes sense. And really fueled by how are we going to move forward? How are we going to troubleshoot? How are we going to problem solve? So that kind of yes energy that's very active and very hopeful. It's a real positive mindset approach that absolutely ignites me as opposed to deflating me.
I love it. Okay. Any other ones that you?
Well, I mean, the opposite of everything I just described in the pet peeves.
Yeah.
Which is this idea of the care is I love when somebody stops and asks me something about something they know is going on in my life, whether it's with my children or you just had this thing or you bought that thing or you moved there. That kind of knowing and asking is such a love language for me. And so those are lovely things when people that I work with regularly think to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Erika thinks to do that all the time. So it's nice. She's the person that does know her people. She knows everybody's kids' names. She knows their pets' names. Like getting to know these people is generally not something that they will shy away from. They're not the folks who you have to be nervous about asking about their personal life too much or, I mean, I don't know.
Well, and
how do you?
Because to me, that is so much. You talk about trust at the beginning. That's so much about how much you fill your trust jar. The trust quotient goes up when you show that you not only know, but you care and you're aware that this person does not just exist within the confines of the walls of your shared workspace. So that also looks like something unexpected has occurred in my outside of these walls life, and it's throwing me off track. And you, instead of being like, well, too bad for you because the report's due at 5, say, oh, wow, something has occurred. Let's figure out how we can all rally around you and support. Maybe somebody else can take this task. Maybe we can find an extension on the deadline. So that kind of, again, that word care and trust comes when the more you know, the more you can in real time adjust and adapt when something trickles into the workspace. So there is something about we work together for hours in the course of a day, but that's not any of our whole lives. And we've talked about this before, that I think that's becoming a more antiquated notion that within work, that's all it is and everything else stays at the door. And, this idea of no, this is part of my whole life. And the more we care for our whole selves, the more productive I actually will be when I'm within the constraints and confines of our work time together.
There's a story I was just thinking about when Erika and I were working together once there in New York City. We were in downtown Manhattan and there was the New York City blackout. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And and I had
vividly.
I was running this big curriculum team that was putting together all these lessons that we had to get done, and we had a very, difficult schedule, and it was hard to have all these people together. And so we had a meeting with all these folks, and then the electricity goes out, right?
The lights went out across all of New York City.
And so you think about what would you... this is not a proud moment that I had as a leader, but you think about what you would do. And what did I do was I started to get candles out.
Christine got candles so that we could keep working.
I got candles.
Come on, folks.
Put candles in the room. And we're like, come on, we can keep going. Let's go. We got candles. We can do this. And I'm the leader in the room. So people are just, bless them, doing it, right? They're like, okay, we got the candles.
As we're looking out the window being like, is the whole city dark right now?
Right.
Is it just our building?
Are we safe? Are we, all the things that could come up, especially for somebody who lives in New York City. I think this was after 9/11, wasn't it?
I was trying to, I think it was.
I think it was,
after,
yeah.
so
And
that added an extra edge.
Yeah. So anytime you have something like that, right, happen, and you just want to be like, are we safe? Is this just our building? Is this everything? Am I going to get home? You could imagine like all the thoughts going into someone. And I just thought I could overpower all of those thoughts with my candles and my very galvanizing spirit. And we were sitting there in the dark trying to read our papers, and then Erika goes, Christine, are we going to address the elephant in the room right now? And I was like, what? And then you kind of collected yourself and you were like, we're in the dark. Like, are we safe? Are our families safe? Can we get home? Like, can we just talk for a minute about the situation that we're in? Can we talk about how we're feeling? And of course, I was just plowing through. And what you were so delicately and powerfully reminding me of was like, everybody, I need to attend to people's thoughts, feelings, concerns, fears, whatever it was. And we need to attend to that right now as a group before we think that any real work is going to happen, and that was one of those really like kind of smack in the face reminders for me. Like I laugh at it, but sometimes I do have to be reminded of that. And it's hopefully I'm reminding myself, even if I start, to stop and go, okay, wait a minute here, breathe, let's breathe this in and not be afraid of like what's going to happen, you know?
Well, and it's an important reminder of why we need all different types in the workplace, because we balance each other out in terms of how we're looking at a situation, and we need everyone looking in different directions, honestly, because the collective is looking in all the right places. Any one of us can't look in all the directions, you know? So if I'm going to, in a moment like that, immediately just think about work is not what we're doing right now. We need to make sure we need to get home. That to have somebody being like, well, maybe we can work still is a good balance. You know, that sort of driving us toward a task is important to have. You know, I always laugh that you used to make fun of me all the time that I had a weird obsession with the weather reports, because I would be like, I think bad weather's coming for this event that we're having, or this person is flying into town, you know, because you'd be like, you crazy weather lady, because I'm thinking of how are the people going to feel in this moment? And that's good and helpful to have, but that can't be the only thought process on the team. You have to have somebody else being like, weather schmether, let's go forward. And then the two perspectives with others start to balance out. So to really emphasize, it's so helpful to do any of these kind of assessments and note, if you're all one type, then you're not going to be as productive or have the successful outcomes that you hope for, because you're all too much focused in one direction. The most vibrant, healthy workplaces, like I said, are looking in all the directions because you have these different mindsets. So we like to joke and tease with each other, but there's not one that's better or worse than the other. They all provide value when you look at how you're looking.
Or maybe you're having plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. You know, when
Yeah.
COVID hit, that was another example where my instinct is to think, oh, it won't be that bad. It's not going to be as bad as they say. They're so hyperbolic, whatever. Look, of course, we're going to keep working. And in our executive team, when Erika was in there, she's always going to be on the side of like, whoa, we need to plan for like the worst possible situation, you know, and I'm always on the other side of it. And so what was good is that we had, going into COVID, do you remember this? We said, okay, since we don't know, then we need to really look at like, let's have a practice week where we all bring our computers home. We practice as if this happened. And then of course we did that, and then it happened right then. But the good thing was we all had our computers home and we all had everything ready for this practice one. But I would not have done that as a leader. I would not have done all of that planning, but your kind of steadiness, as well as other people in the group, right? Other types, drivers, analytical types, everybody,
which is so
coming
helpful
together. We had real different plans on what we would do. And so you're right, it is very helpful. So what if if we shift your thoughts real quick, instead of working with someone, what if somebody, a salesperson, we have a lot of salespeople out there that we work with, and a lot of salespeople that want to get better at their jobs, and they, bless them, they have very little time sometimes to read the room, read the person, get ready for, you know, the ask, take some risk, get ready for rejection, whatever it is. What do you think is some of the things that can make it easier for folks who are trying to sell to you, or your type?
Yeah, we may be the trickiest ones for this reason, because on the one hand, you might think, oh, I need to be real personable and, you know, get in there and be friendly. But if it reads at all inauthentic, we're out. It's done. It's done before it even starts. So many salespeople over the years have failed with me because they come off with a sort of fake personality that's meant to disarm and charm. And just don't even waste your time, because this story is over. And so it's tricky because there is a connection that is needed if you're gonna successfully sell to me, but it has to be authentic. So that's tricky for a salesperson, to your point, especially if they're working with multiple clients, any kind of fast paced. You're having to have a different approach, and you don't necessarily know which approach, you know, you're going to need. But to come in strong and inauthentic, probably for no type will that work. So if I have to give a generic tip to the salespeople out there, don't even bother, because your friendliness is not going to work if it's fake friendly. I'd rather you just be blunt, and then we work our way into friendliness. So authenticity is, you know, so that is not a script. That's not you have a problem and I have a solution approach. That is a genuine caring of starting with believing in the product that you're selling. So I get ignited by other people's genuine passion and authenticity. So it doesn't even have to start with be authentically friendly to me if you don't know anything about me yet. Show me your passion for the product or service that you're selling.
Yeah.
I'm going to get excited by that energy. And then that'll lead itself into like that opens the door to the conversation.
Yeah. And that's a good one.
So I would say if you're a salesperson, you have to, right? You have to, and if you're not passionate about your product, then it's time for some reevaluation. Like either figure out how to ignite your own passion.
I think
sell something different.
If I was to add on to that too, I think one of the reason why you're so sensitive to authenticity, which a lot of people are, right? But I think for people in this category, right? Because they're so people oriented, they are good at being authentically with people. They pick up on those folks who may not be as naturally good at it with strangers. And so some people have a harder time. And so they fake it till they make it, a lot. And we can just, it hurts more. I think with somebody in this category, their walls go up faster because let's 100%. Face it, these folks get taken advantage of sometimes by folks, right? Yeah. Because they are so caring. So immediately they're going to pick up on like, if you think that don't think that my caringness is, gullibility or anything
right
else.
Or stupidity or I have a perfect example of this. So I live in a part of the country where there's lots of windstorms and thunderstorms. So always after, a sequence of storms, always the roofing companies come through the neighborhoods and talk to you about how you definitely need a new roof after the storm damage from last night's storm. Always. I mean, they're just crawling. There's roof guys always. They come to your door and they try to convince you to get a new roof. So not that long ago, there was a group of them combing our neighborhood, so the first one knocks and I'm on guard already because I'm already, I know there's been a storm and I don't want a new roof, but this nice guy, this nice, smart person just is kind of laughing from the start about he knows how ridiculous it is that they're always combing through the neighborhood. So he disarms me with, I know this is ridiculous. How is your roof? What do you even think about new roofs? And we're just chatting. I'm still a no, but like he's warming me up that I've ever became a yes. In my mind, this might be the company I would go for if I on my own chose a new roof, until his clearly manager, supervisor, sees that he's been talking to me for a long time, so makes the assessment that he must be doing something wrong or he must need some help. And so he and another guy join the conversation and the manager supervisor, takes over. And starts asking me real sale, like, who's your current insurance provider? Oh yeah, they're terrible. Did you know that, and that? And who's this person? Oh yeah, they're terrible. This, that, and that. And to a point where I finally said, you really should have let so-and-so keep talking because now I'm definitely not going to be working with you. Like he blew it. He blew it. And because he thought he was saving the young kid who didn't know what he was doing, where the young kid actually knew exactly what he was doing. He knew it wasn't going to be a yes today. So he was cultivating a relationship for the future yes.
Yeah.
Whereas the sales, the slick sales guy supervisor is like, let me show you how knowledgeable I am and how much you don't know what you're doing with this insurance company or that. And that was the end of it,
I love it. That's so funny. It's probably very helpful for them if you could take it in, Erika, to have knocked on your door that day. But I do think too, with that, I think if you're selling to somebody like yourself or another, it's a long-term sale. Like this is something where it's going to take you a while. And so you start off just knowing that you're going to share what you love, like you said, about what you do, but also that you give a lot because they value giving. You give them free things. You give them, try this here. No, you don't have to, I'm not asking you for anything. Take this if you need, if it's helpful to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Here's a free example. Here's in our world, here's a free lesson, or here's a free, or I'll come out and do a free demo, or I'll do, no pressure. I just, there's just something here for you, knowing that nothing is coming back anytime soon. You're just going to be with, hopefully
you're building the relationship.
You're building relationship with this person over time, and then they will trust you eventually. And then if they need something, they will find you.
100%.
Right?
And on that side of it, and then we will keep, if it's some kind of service or product that requires repurchasing, we will become your loyal fan. Like we will always choose you and use you and recommend you.
And
So that
yeah,
it is a long game and you don't get the immediate payoff, but you get the long-term client that will recommend you, that will keep coming back to you. So if you're up for the marathon, we are very loyal once we've made that decision.
very loyal, and they have a million friends. So whether it's on social media or personally, and I mean, you do this all the time. You talk glowingly about certain people, and if they don't like
It's
you,
true.
God help you. I mean,
It's true.
it's true.
It's true, and both are true. It's true.
Be very generous with them.
So the sales approach that won't work for us is you got to buy today or this deal's, gone. Well, goodbye. We're not playing that game. We're not playing the games. We just
Yeah.
won't do it.
And you're not pushing them for anything. You
Yeah.
can take your time. Unlike the driver where you have to get back to them right away with stuff, you can take your time
Yeah.
on some of that. Okay. So one of the other things, and I didn't tell you about this ahead of time, Erika, but one of the other things we're trying to do with looking at all these styles is overlapping it into that wonderful situational leadership framework. So if you remember situational leadership, basically you have 4 quadrants. If you have somebody that you've identified as an enthusiastic beginner, right, in your organization, and they require a lot of direction and little support in the beginning because they have so much of their own motivation and confidence in their enthusiasm of a new start or new something. And then it goes to a disillusioned learner, right, where things start to get hard, and then their confidence starts waning, and then it goes to cautious but capable contributor, where they've kind of got it now, but they're a little bit afraid to take risks, or they're a little maybe bored or just kind of stuck a little bit. And then it gets to, if you can get them through that, then they become a self-reliant achiever, where you're delegating, all things are rolling until they get promoted again and they become an enthusiastic beginner, and round we go, right? And so one of the things I wanted to look at is if you have, let's say, an enthusiastic beginner and you've identified that they happen to be an amiable style or a steadiness or enablement, all these things that we're talking about with you today, what are some ways for an enthusiastic beginner? What are some tips on managing those types of folks that are in that place?
Oh, that's so interesting. It's so interesting because when we talk about situational leadership for the enthusiastic beginner, we know that they need to be really overtly told what to do. This is how to do the task. This is what tasks are expected of you. This is by when. And we're really holding hands at the beginning, so that you are director/teacher. This is the path, and I'm standing by your side and laying it out before you. And so I would say absolutely that is a way to show care, is that you over communicate. These are the expectations. This is by when. And then even though when we talk about situational leadership, we're light on the supportive encouragement, for an amiable type like me, you layer that encouragement in from the beginning to say, when I'm seeming to understand or the lights are going on. Yes, that was great. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That is what I meant. Or gentle, a little less like that and a little more like this. So I would say over communication. If you think you're communicating too much, you probably even want to turn up the dial a little bit more. That's how much someone like me needs that. Just as clear as can be, as detailed as possible. What, who, what, when, where is such a generous act, because it requires a lot of time for the leader at the beginning to hold hands with the new person that much. But the payoff in the end, again, thinking of long game, they're going to be your fast horse, but just really that over communicative care is really where it's at.
And one thing you taught me in terms of that is, and this is especially good for an enthusiastic beginner, and you can lighten up later, is emails. So if you're talking to them, to also put it in writing, and if you color code it or you make it super clear with what you highlight, what you underline, what you bold, they're going to actually appreciate that. That's one thing I learned from you for sure.
Because then because in the beginning, everything is unclear. Because you're starting a new job or you're starting a new project. Either way, it's all unknown. And so you're counting the person who's designated your leader in that moment, whether it's the project manager or the company boss, they're holding the only lantern. They're your only light at the beginning. And so that's a lot of power, right? And so as the project manager or the leader, you have to remember they're counting on your light to guide them. And so it's just you cannot be too much in the beginning there.
Right. Okay. Now, when they become a disillusioned learner, and we don't know when this happens, right? But it's when they start to realize what they don't know, and they start to get really a little bit panicked. Like, I'm a little bit I'm in
over my head. I can't do this, right? Oh my gosh, what was I thinking taking this job or taking on this project or taking these new responsibilities?
Right. And so we still have high direction, but now high support comes in. So what does high support look like for somebody who is this type?
This is harder. So I would start with if you know this person already. So in this example, I'm not in a new organization, so my supervisor knows me, but I'm maybe in a new role, or I'm taking like charge of a new project. You refer back to past examples of where I clearly know what I'm doing. So remember when you tackled that problem, remember when you handled that project, remember how you dealt with that person. You have these capabilities. So connecting the dots in my head to not only can I do this, I've done it before. I've demonstrated that I've done it before. If it's a new person to you, so it's a new job, it's a new relationship, you don't have those past examples, I think the best way is just that general, we brought you on board because of these skills and qualities that you have. We don't expect you to know everything yet. We chose you because you bring exactly the energy, the insight, the experience, whatever those things are that made you choose that person. A reminder is needed at that moment when I'm disillusioned and think, oh no, I'm a fraud, you know?
I love it. Okay. So now let's say you've gotten them through that. They've gotten through that, and they're now in that cautious but capable contributor where they're a little bit afraid. And you see this in this type a lot because they tend to want to be safe. And so there's sometimes a fear of risk taking. So sometimes you can see careers stall out with this folks, right? Or they feel like, why am I not moving up? But then there's a little bit of a risk taking factor that's necessary sometimes for growth, that sometimes we're afraid with amiable or steady folks to disrupt the apple cart because they're good employees. But like, how do you kind of push them to that next level?
I think that's such a good one because the way you just framed it, the immediate thoughts that came to my mind are to really ask them a lot of questions about what they think or what they would do in the situation. So in staff meetings, Erika, what do you think about this if that person is not immediately jumping in? Erika, what's your perspective on how we should deal with this client if they're not jumping in? So you ask directly their opinions and thoughts to show them you want that in the room. The other thing is to nudge them towards leadership positions. Hey, we have this staff meeting on Friday. The main focus of topic is going to be this project you're working on. Why don't you lead the meeting? Hey, we have our all staff retreat next week. You don't know these team members as well. They don't know you as well. Why don't you lead an opening icebreaker so you all can get to know each other? So that kind of nudging into leadership and nudging into outward voice is probably the best way. It's loving, but it's nudging.
And it's also in their strength set, right? Something that has to do
Absolutely.
with the other people.
You're not setting them up to fail. You're really not you don't want to set them up to fail. So you don't want to shove them into a spotlight moment where they're not ready or they maybe don't have the skills. So this is well within your realm of what you've been working on or what you know. I'm going to ask you questions about that.
All right. And then once they're a self-reliant achiever, how do you still give them, because this is generally when we have very low direction and also low support because they don't need it. They get a lot from their colleagues.
Yeah.
And stuff. But how can you still give them without being patronizing? You want to keep these people, right? So what's important in that?
Yeah, I think you just said it. It's important not to forget about them because that's what happens when we get to that level. Everyone's kind of running and doing their own thing. So it can be very tempting for the leader to be focusing on their new little puppies that need more of their time and to forget all about their high performers, high achievers. So the high performers, high achievers don't want you to micromanage them, certainly, but they do want to be remembered. So that can look like just a nod to, that was a really fantastic way that you handled that client. Oh, wow, I really appreciated the work you put into that project. Oh, that was a creative solution to that. So those kind of very specific nods or praises. So if you're following I know in past episodes, you've talked about different project management techniques and the power of the one-on-one. So using that weekly time, not utilizing the weekly time just with your newer hires, but to still hold space for your veterans. And that time can be used these are some things that I've really thought were cool that you're working on. And is there anything that you need? How could I best support you? Are you needing any additional support? They may 100% of the time be like, nah, I'm good. But to know that you asked is the ask is the gesture of love.
They also tend to be really good managers and supervisors. So I think if you can give them supervisory role or management role over somebody and then start to notice that part of them, like how well those people skills, those relationships that they've garnered are having an impact on your company as a whole, I think makes a difference too.
Absolutely. And because then they also know, oh, wow, I am doing this well. And then you remind them you're still there to support them, supporting their team, so that the support is different, but that they still have support. They're not having to carry the burden of leadership on their own because they have you.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully you have someone as well. However that structure looks, that somebody is always offering. Yeah. Is caring. It's the word of the day.
Okay. So with that, let's care for folks and give them some tips, because for a lot of people, this is their favorite part. So we're just going to ping pong back and forth with some tips. It could be about around managing. It could be managing up. It could be managing sideways. It could be selling, anything that you have in terms of a tip to help with these types of folks in the workplace. Okay. So you got one. You want to start, or you want me to start?
I can start because it's the tip related to the very first thing we started talking about, which is my pet peeve. So for those of you that are like, why can't I just pick up the phone and call you or walk to your desk? It's really not that hard. Just text or message, however your communication is, to say, do you have 5 minutes for a quick phone call about, because if you just say a quick phone call, then they're scared that they're in trouble. That's just the truth. So do you have 5 minutes for a quick chat about this project? Hey, can I come to your desk to talk about that thing? And they'll say, yes, great. Or they'll say, can you give me however much time they need?
Great. And that's a good tip for your friends, for children, for teenagers, for spouses, however you want to do it. That's great. All right. The tip that I have is the art of the check-in. So at the beginning of your meetings, not to just jump into a meeting, but to have a quick whip around that people know is like, even if you have to put a timer on, but 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever you want to give to it. And a little plug for our 52 Ways to Connect deck that Erika helped us pull together and during COVID is super helpful for your teams, and having a deck of cards that you could just pull out, and that's available on Amazon. Okay, next one.
Well, since we're talking about meetings, after you've had that sort of connection moment, which PS never takes as long as people who resist to this idea think it will. So if you're resistant to the idea because you think it's going to totally take over your whole meeting, it won't. It can be a minute or two. But the second part of that, which is a really caring way to lead the time with your team, is to respect the time with the team. And one way to demonstrate that respect is to outline how that time is going to be spent. So we're here for an hour. Our primary priorities are to talk about A, B, and C, anything else anyone really needs to talk about during our time together. So again, it's that brief moment of sort of setting the stage and setting the expectations so that it feels very clear that you respect and value the people's time that are with you. That goes a long way for us amiable types.
I love it. Okay, the next one I have is, if you have some note of appreciation that you want to give them, put it in a card in writing and send it home to them, or put it on their desk. But if you send it home, that's like double points. But Erika always sends little cards for birthdays. I get glitterified every, time. She's very thoughtful that way. But if you can remember their birthdays, even if they're a potential client, again, it's long-term, so if you send them, if that roofer sends you a card for your birthday, no thing, just, whatever. Roofing companies start sending cards.
I'll buy. That's the roof I'll buy. It's true. It's the roof I'll buy.
All right. Next tip.
Well, I was thinking about this idea of authenticity. So it's connected. I'm trying to figure out how to make this a tangible tip because it's such an important note, which is authenticity rules everything else. So don't mistake an amiable person for just needing to be chatted up, because I don't need to be chatted up. I just need to be seen as a whole person authentically. So I think one way for a supervisor to think is to always hold this question in your pocket, which is, what's the best way that I can support you right now? Or what do you need from me right now? Can be great opening questions for a manager to really connect authentically with an amiable type, which is leading with the question and not feeling like you have to chit chat.
Right. And if you do ask a question and they do open up, have time to listen to it.
Yes.
Don't open it up if you're about to walk away, because they're going to pick up on that real quick and they're not going to open up next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let me just add another tip there, which is an important one of actually actively listening. If you ask how are you, how's it going, how's your family, is everything okay? And you don't have time for or actually care about the answer in that moment, it doesn't make you an uncaring, cold person. It means you're focused on the task right now and you don't have the space for it. Don't ask it, because that will do damage. That will long outlast that moment, and you'll be working to repair that for longer than you think you should.
Right. And then my last tip, and we'll close for the day, but is that these people are really great for a culture of an organization, and you should put them on your celebration squads or how you're building the culture, or ask them like, who's struggling right now? What do we need to do as a company to make this a better place to work? Because they have a million ideas. If you do half of them, it'll make a big difference at becoming a more caring, loving, kind place to work. And who doesn't want that? Erika, thank you so much for being that for me for so many years, and for coming in today and so generously offering your tips and ideas on how to work with you and these loving, wonderful people in our workforces that we do need to care for. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a joy.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.